Hey everyone, welcome to today's webinar on the top QuickBooks Online trends for 2023. We've got an awesome panel here of top 100 pro advisors, so say hello to Laura and Kelly. They've got tons of great tips prepared for you, and while we wait for people to kind of just trickle in, feel free to introduce yourself in the questions tab. You'll see somewhere on the GoToWebinar control panel that you'll see somewhere on your screen, and then we can do some intros, and then we'll dive straight into some great content. So I see a few of you guys are chatting in from, let's see, Las Vegas, Florida, New York. That's awesome. So my name's Elish, and for those of you that don't know me, I lead the SEO and content team here at Method. We're kind of best known for being the #1 QuickBooks CRM. So if you haven't heard of us, feel free to check us out. And if you've been on any of our webinars before, I might be a familiar face. So with that, I'll pass the intro over to Laura, though.
Hi, I'm Laura Redmond, and I am based in Northern California, just outside of San Francisco in Silicon Valley. And I am a long-time Method user and lover and have used it a lot in my practice. So I have an accounting firm, and we moved all our clients to QuickBooks Online in about 2010-ish. So we have been using that online web kind of model for a long time, and we do the accounting. We act as the accounting department, so we're a CAS firm. And then I also am a co-founder of Arrow Workflow, which is an app that helps accounting firms manage all of the work they do for all of their clients. And then I also have been for many years a trainer for Intuit and writing the QuickBooks Online certification and teaching it around the country. So that's where I'm coming from, and all along the way using Method and Arrow like every day. And QuickBooks. Lots of other apps. Take it away, Kelly.
Hi, everybody. I am Kelly Gonsalves. I am based in New York City. I have an accounting firm called Totally Booked, where we specialize in QuickBooks Online, and we help our clients primarily in the e-commerce space with integrating different apps that help make their process go a little smoother, and in turn make our process go a little bit smoother. So I've done a couple of webinars with Method before. I'm always honored to work with you guys and appreciate you having me. And I am also a part of the Trainer Writer Network for Intuit. So I get to teach other people how to use QuickBooks and their different processes and kind of optimizing that situation on the accounting side. So I think that's everything. Yeah.
Sounds good, Kelly. I'm sure you'll tell us more later in the call. So that's great. So I know we've heard a little bit from some of our audience members on where you're tuning in from, but we did want to kick things off with a poll. So I'm just going to launch that, and all of you guys can hopefully participate. So let's just get that going. So what myself, Kelly, and Laura are interested to know is, what are all of you guys focusing on for 2023? We've got a few kind of good contenders here that I think, realistically, all of us are going to be focusing on more than just one. But maybe if you guys could select your top one, that'll give me a sense of kind of what you guys are looking to achieve in 2023, and we can kind of tailor our recommendations based on this. So we've got a few answers. The first one is just growth in general. Second one is customer retention. Third is increasing efficiency. And then fourth is hiring the right people, which we all know is a challenge these days. So it looks like most of you guys have voted. I'm just going to leave the poll open for a couple more seconds, so make sure to get your vote in if you haven't already. And with that, I will close the poll and share those results. All right, so this is interesting. Yeah, increasing efficiency. So that sounds right on brand with some of the other kind of things we've been hearing in the space. Growth, and then a little bit fewer focusing on hiring the right people and customer retention. So great, guys. Thanks so much for participating there. And with that, we can get into our content for today. So first question for our panel, what trends and challenges are you anticipating for 2023? Kelly, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so I guess in line with that poll, I would say that one of the top trends that are going around, or challenges, I guess I would say, is finding and retaining talent. So a lot of times finding talent is hard enough, but then now keeping them has become increasingly difficult for a lot of firms and I guess small businesses in general. You know, people are looking for more to get more out of their work, and with that, they're looking for more from their employers. And a lot of people have started their own companies in the last couple of years, so that's also made it a shift from, you know, employee to either employer or, you know, contractor, I would say. Yeah, so I guess that was like a negative thing to start with, sorry. So the more trendy side of things, so Intuit wanting to reach out with the accountant community more, we had said that we would share the link, and I'm not sure if it's on one of the slides, but they are doing their feedback in action, which is a really big deal, where they're trying to work closer with accountants and partner with them to, I'm going to call it, fix some of the things that are in QuickBooks Online. So they're asking all of us to give them feedback from within the product to make sure that they know that something is, you know, wrong or broken or needs attention or could be done better, whatever that looks like. And then they're publishing, I want to say it's monthly, but it's a little sporadic, I'm pretty sure. They're publishing what they're doing to make those changes. So as people are giving them feedback, they're then taking that, aggregating all of that data, figuring out what is most important to everyone or what is most pressing, and then releasing changes to the software according to that. So we've seen with QuickBooks Online, at QuickBooks Connect, that they had announced a bunch of changes to the software. And so with that, it's all part of that feedback and action. So gearing some of their engineering days and just some of their resources towards making things better for us as accountants, and then in turn for our clients. That's their really, really, really big push this year. And it looks like they're going to continue it, because I want to say they're on version 4, I believe it is, was the last one that was published. And when Laura's talking, I'll pull up the link so that we can share it with everyone. But yeah, do you want to take some of these, Laura, so that I don't steal all?
I can touch on the same ones that you brought up, are just sort of, from my standpoint, seeing this happening. I have a call with Intuit. They just reached out wanting to talk about a certain program, certain feature. I actually have 2 calls coming up where they're just reaching out saying, hey, do you and other accounting professionals have time to talk to us and give us your feedback? What are you seeing on the ground with the clients you work with? And so I know they are looking to connect with the accounting community, and I think that's great. And if they're not calling on you, I can think of 2 ways that you can sort of get in touch with them. One of them is within QuickBooks Online, use the give feedback. They do read and process all of the feedback that they receive, and they rank them and, determine when to work on what's the most needed functionality they need to be building, that sort of thing. And then also I've met a lot of people at Intuit through going to the accounting profession conferences, such as QuickBooks Connect, which Kelly mentioned. And so Intuit is out there all the time looking to connect with us. So I definitely see that happening still, and certainly over the last decade. On hiring and finding talent and the Great Resignation and all of that together, I think that is a big issue for our profession, and how many people coming out of school are going into our profession. I know that is an issue that the AICPA has on their radar and is working towards. And I think it's kind of exciting for practitioners that have firms to kind of, as we roll out this not new, it's a decade old now, it's old news, going cloud. We all get it. We're all going cloud-based, but it's kind of exciting to sort of have this new frontier of building firms differently. And what are they going to look like now? And how do we attract talent like that? So I think that's kind of exciting and frustrating. Of course, it is frustrating because we have a smaller pool to pull from there. And then workflow automation, of course, goes along with that cloud infrastructure, which is using the apps that integrate with QuickBooks Online, or whatever ecosystem you're in. But that's going to add to that automation. When you see an app and you think, oh, I don't want to pay more for this app because you're looking at the subscription price, look over at your labor, because you're going to save money on the labor side to automate things and optimize things. And of course, cybersecurity, I'll just throw out, I think, is so key to everything. And I think that if you look at the App Store and the rigorous requirements needed to get listed on the App Store, at least on Intuit's App Store, that's a lot of security that can make you feel secure. And then if you just look at fraud prevention, I've done webinars with like Bill.com, and they're really big on fraud prevention with their positive pay and all the things they have built in for cybersecurity around payments. And there are a couple of great fraud documents that you can just Google and find that are publicly available that talk to you about all of the solutions you can get in building in internal controls. Okay, I can go down any of these roads for too long, but there, I touched on all of them.
Thanks so much, Laura. I think the cybersecurity one is definitely really interesting, and I think if there's one key takeaway for the audience today, it's like educate yourself. Information is definitely power here, and you don't want to leave your QuickBooks data vulnerable. So with that, we're going to move on to our second poll, which is actually around cybersecurity. So let me just get that one up for you guys. So we're just curious how everyone on the call today is feeling in terms of readiness around cybersecurity. So we've got a few options for you to select from. The first one is you're ready, you have a response plan, you have ongoing training for your team. The second one is you're aware of the risk, but you do not have any formal, plans or training in place, which is totally okay. And then the third is you're not ready and you need to get, some sort of plan and training off the ground there. So there's no right or wrong answers. We just want to make sure we can tailor the next slide's content to kind of where everyone on the call today is at. So I'll leave this poll open. Yeah, go ahead.
And if I may, while people are answering, I just want to kind of bring that home, kind of set a visual around it, because sometimes response plans historically have looked like some written up document in a binder on a shelf. Like, did we write up a formal plan? Like, it's something that's very hard to get to doing, right? But if you sort of see your plan more as the workflow, like the separation of duties, these are the steps we do when we pay bills, when we wire funds. Like when we wire funds, you have to have a written request for it, but you also have to make a telephone call to the person, because there are business email scams that false requests can come in via email if you don't have a verbal behind it. Anyway, there are, for everything you do to be secure, there are workflows, ways that you do things, and separation of duties that are the plan, right? So that's actually putting the plan in action. And I think when you look at it that way, you can sort of live in that secure way of being better than if you're picturing it as like some formal plan that you don't have time to go write up.
I think also keeping it updated is a big one. So have a plan for your plan. Have a plan to keep it current. So as staff comes in and out, as your clients change, whatever that looks like, contacts for your clients, contacts, let's say at your bank or their bank, whatever that is, making sure that those things stay updated. So having something that's live rather than, let's say, like a binder on the shelf, it's probably going to be the most helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Totally makes sense. So let's see how our audience today is doing when it comes to cybersecurity readiness. So it looks like most of you guys are in the middle here, which is pretty common. So we're going to go over some slides next that kind of cover some tips on how to protect your QuickBooks Online data. And we're going to get some more insights from our experts here on our panel today. So Kelly, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So I do always recommend, like when you're connecting anything to QuickBooks, start with the apps.com, so QuickBooks App Store. Using something that has already been kind of vetted and goes through their process is going to help to make sure that you're in line with what they consider secure, which I always compare to something like online banking. So having, two-factor authentication is big, but then also they have guidelines for when an app can time out and what, the back-end security looks like connecting to their API and what information it has access to, all of that information. So using their app store is definitely where I start. Never share, some of these seem very simple, but never share confidential information over the phone or in an email. So using either an encrypted, either communication tool or making sure when you're doing like a file exchange that you're doing it in an encrypted environment, something that's going to keep those things guarded from outside systems, separated from your QuickBooks. I think Laura, or either it was you or your teammate, had said, like, never sharing or storing, credit card information inside of QuickBooks in a note field, or storing something on, let's say, a sales receipt, or putting those, those different account numbers or any information like that where it would be more vulnerable, is I guess the best way I could put it. So there are reasons that we keep stuff like credit card numbers and bank account information separated from any of the transactional stuff that's in QuickBooks. So Lisio also comes up when it comes to confidential information. I use that for my clients. Again, secure communication, but then also file exchange is a big one. So we're talking about bank account numbers, tax returns, social security numbers, anything along those lines. It terrifies me when someone just sends that over via email, because really the biggest vulnerability is email. So if your email is hacked and all of those things, think about how much you have in your inbox. If you have sensitive information in there and someone knows what they're looking for and how to find it, they're going to be able to get to it a lot faster than you can probably even imagine. So just thinking, I've been in business for about 7.5 years. Like, I couldn't even remember what came to me in those early days, but still in my inbox. And so anything that, leaves you or your clients vulnerable, you're going to want to make sure to use something to send those back and forth. Again, watching where you put things in QuickBooks, never in a note field, never in a memo field. Don't save it on the client profile, anything along those lines, keeping that credit card and account information separate. And then I'm going to say Laura is probably the queen when it comes to accounting workflows. So I'm going to pass that last one to her. But I would say putting things in order, like you said, separation of, I want to say power, but separation of roles and having people checks and balances is probably the most important there.
Yeah, I mean, I would only add to that, the different apps we use certainly have different permissions that you can give to the different people playing different roles. So when you separation of duties and have, not one person in charge of the entire accounts payable or money outside of the business, you have, 2 or 3 people, maybe one person enters a bill, someone else approves it, and someone else pays it. And so each of those people playing their different roles have different permissions within the software to be able to access what they need. And not too much information. And then I definitely agree with, encrypted. We see that, that's pretty normal now and expected, but do make sure that any new app that you're going to start using in your firm or in your business does have, username, password protected. And I know it's not popular to say, but try not to share your username and password. Sometimes you just have to, but we do like to have our clients invite us to their bank and issue us a new username and password with a phone number. I mean, now you kind of have to, because almost everything verifies it to a text message, so you can even log in. And so it's gotten very hard to share usernames on a lot of apps. And so if you think, oh, that's so annoying with that verification, you can also at the same time think, well, that's very good security. Good job, app. Yeah. So what else did I not touch on? I will say that we are not our firm is not focused on particularly fraud prevention. That's not the goal of our firm. But even though that's not our specialty, it's certainly a big part of accounting. You learn that when you learn accounting. But still we see, so I'm sure people who are, fraud accountants see fraud all the time. That's what they do. But even in a regular firm, we have seen fraud, so much more than I would have thought. We've worked with countless clients who have come to us and said, our person that did our accounting for years that we trusted just stole money, was writing checks to herself and signing, we've seen it. We've had, how you think, oh, it doesn't really happen that something gets lost in the mail, and then it does, and you're like, oh, it really does happen, like more than you think. And so our clients have had checks stolen, and money, it's happened. I've sat through like fraud investigations with detectives and stuff that are looking into it, multi-state, big. So it is out there and we've seen it. So you do want to do what you can, but I also don't mean to breathe fear into everyone's day. Just, you know, set yourself
I
up
think
for a good.
password keepers are also one, we didn't list it, but also super important. So being able to, if there's a situation where you can't get your own login, having something where the password is, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Start out, not showing. So you're not sharing the actual password and stuff like that. So giving them access without giving full access is important. But generally speaking, I insist on a bank login and everything separated, because if you have to go back, if the client has to go back, if there's an investigation, I want to show when I logged in and when I logged out, all of my keystrokes, everything that was done. I want to make sure that we're not in any way implicated in any of that. So.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, how do you collaborate as a team, as a firm? It's hard to ask your client to give each of you a login. So when I say we get a separate login, I mean, usually that's for the firm, and then we have to keep it very safe to share it. So in our case, we use Arrow. I know there are other apps people use, of course, but in our case, we use Arrow to have our checklist of the work we do, and there in the encrypted fields are the username, passwords, capitalization, tax ID numbers, all the things we need are in the vault at the bottom of the Arrow checklist. So they're not only the encrypted, but, and this is just something to look out for in whatever solution you're going to use, but the permission to use them. Like if you're an intern in our firm, you won't even see that that information's there. Like the row doesn't even show for you when you log in because you don't have that level of permission, but a manager may see all of those rows with all of that data in it. So whoever needs access should have access, and whoever doesn't.
Yep.
Exactly. Great answers from both of you guys. Just before we move on, I do have a question from Paul that I think would maybe make sense to plug in here. So they're wondering if any of the tools we kind of talked about, so whether it's Arrow or Lisco, or Lisio, sorry, if any of them are available for a QuickBooks desktop user who is like using a cloud server for remote access. I'm not sure if either of you guys know the answer to that one.
Yeah. So Lisio is independent of, so while it does have a QuickBooks Online integration for creating invoices, it's really more of a communication and a file sharing tool. One cool thing about the desktop, I guess, aspect of it is that the file size that you can send is fairly large. And so you're able to send back and forth those really large desktop files, which is kind of rare because a lot of systems can't handle that. Like you can't email a desktop file. So some people use it that way for file exchange, but it really is independent of. So we're using it more to send documents, communicate with clients, sometimes assigning to-dos, whether that's internal or external, but it's not necessarily tied to the accounting system. And then Arrow, Laura definitely knows better.
Same for Arrow. Your checklist, it's not your financial software, so you're just keeping your workflow in there. You can integrate it to QuickBooks Online, but you don't have to. If you're in desktop, you don't need to integrate.
Cool.
And the
Great.
password keepers, same idea. Any password tools are going to be the same, also independent of. I don't think we've mentioned anything specific to QBO.
Yep. Cool. Well, thank you both. Paul,
Also, Method, you would know how that integration works.
Yeah, we also integrate with QuickBooks Desktop as well. So obviously we're on the slide, but we do also work seamlessly with QuickBooks Desktop. So thanks for that, Kelly. All right, so Paul, I hope that answers your question, and we can kind of move on here. So next we're going to be looking at QuickBooks Online features that are new for 2023 or coming soon. So Laura, do you want to start us off?
Yes, well, I just attended QuickBooks Connect one last month now. It was in December, early December. I saw Kelly there, and we saw a bunch of new features shown there, which are very exciting. QuickBooks Online has moved into the mid-market. Thank you, QuickBooks Online Advanced, which is their highest version of QuickBooks Online, and the Advanced version has the new asset tracking functionality coming out. We got to see it If you went by their booth, you could see demos of it. It's currently in beta, so you probably are not seeing it live in the product yet. But what you are seeing live in Advanced, QuickBooks Online Advanced, is the revenue recognition tool, which is very exciting. I am really excited about that. I saw it almost a year ago when it was being built, and by the time it launched, it was so much more mature than what I saw. Like, it was just supposed to be a big journal entry that would happen, and now it's rolled out into, it has its own transaction type and schedules behind it. Anyway, it's a beautiful thing. We heard about, you want me to list all of them? We heard about the launch of the QuickBooks Business Network, which is going to get us into the world of being able to pay and get paid within QuickBooks Online, which you're probably doing out in other apps right now. But I think kind of one way to think about it is to think, look at how many businesses are using QuickBooks, and then they send an invoice from their QuickBooks out into the world through an email to their customer, and then the customer gets it, and what do? They go enter it as a bill in QuickBooks. So this network is going to allow customers who are using QuickBooks to connect to each other and kind of internally send their invoice to the other, record as a bill, and payments and all that kind of stuff. So that's exciting. I don't mean that is launched. I mean that is, we're hearing about what they're going to build. Kelly, I'll let you call out some things.
Okay, so I'm like, I was going to talk about the business network, so I'm like, let me find the link for that. But I have to defer to you on the other ones because I don't know much about them. I'm sorry.
Oh, yes, sorry. The reports. That's what I forgot. The reporting tools. So there are two that I've seen that are really exciting. One of them is if you're using QuickBooks Advanced and you go to the report center, in the upper right, there's a green arrow, and if you use, there's a green button, and there's a little down arrow on it. And if you go there, you can connect your QuickBooks Online company to Excel. And so it'll take you through this little wizard that'll basically download a plugin to Excel, and you'll connect an Excel spreadsheet to the QuickBooks Online company that you choose through the little wizard. And from then on, you've got this Excel spreadsheet that is connected to a QuickBooks company. So you can build like a more custom P&L or something like that. And then you just click a button every so often on your spreadsheet to update it, and it goes into that QuickBooks Online company and refreshes the data. And so that allows you to use the tools to customize that report inside of Excel. So I love that. And then the other thing I've seen, and I don't know what the names of these will end up being, but if you go into let's say you go into Report Center in QuickBooks Online Advanced, and you drill into a P&L, and you're on the P&L like detail report, there you will see a button. Sometimes, I think it's still rolling out. I don't see it in all companies that I'm in, but sometimes you'll see something that says Modern View. And if you click the button, the report header area will switch to the new Modern View of this report and give you more options. And it'll let you do things like, right now how you have a detail report in QuickBooks Online and you can say group by customer, group by vendor, or whatever. You now can group by 2 or 3 things, right? You can group by customer, and within that, group by month if you want. So it's got that. It's got lots of filtering options. Anyway, the button that switches it into that mode is called Modern View. So I tend to kind of call it this new Modern View Reporting Center, and maybe it'll one day take over as what the Report Center is going to look like anyway. But there's functionality in it very similar to pivot tables that we often take data out into QuickBooks for.
Right.
So anyway, I
think this was in response to how they had kind of realigned the advanced reporting in QuickBooks Online Advanced. So I know when they decided to bring it back in-house, they started working on creating actual advanced reporting and giving us some more options. So I know that was part of that movement, and then I believe it's just going to still continue to grow.
Yeah, and I remember looking at a detailed report, and you can group by vendor, and then you can go then you can filter by data that's in another table. So you've grouped, say, expenses by vendor, and then you can say, now filter it to only show me expenses where that vendor is eligible 1099 yes, right? So now you're like join tables and things like that, which is just, I could geek out on that all day. And which, of course, we have always been able to build doing that kind of in method. We could do join tables. That's exciting to see. And Kelly, I think you mentioned this earlier, but there are the monthly-ish in the know webinars that you can watch. And so, and, you know, have your staff watch. So it just kind of is, it's fun to see what the new things are coming out. And even if they don't always apply to you, it's nice to know because, you know, sometimes we're talking to our clients, and if I haven't seen one, you know, a client could be like, what's this? And you're like, I don't know. What? I don't know. So it's nice to
No, it's true.
I
posted the link. I posted the link so that if you guys want to register for those webinars, because a lot of times we find out things kind of after they happen or after they show up in product, or we're working on a client and we're like, why does this look different? So they do a monthly webinar to tell you what changes are coming up, what changes they've made already, etc. So it's free. You can, you know, attend. I put the link in there so you can just take a look and register, keep it on your calendar if you're free, and go. That's usually what I do. But it's a good way to keep on top of the different features and different stuff that's coming up.
That's great.
I also just want to throw out one more little thing kind of related to what I was talking about, the report features, the two new report features. The first one I said, where you can link an Excel spreadsheet to a QuickBooks Online company and keep that data fresh in your spreadsheet. If you want to use something more like a Google spreadsheet so that it's shared and more collaborative, and you don't want it to just be on this one Excel document on my computer, there's an app called Liveflow.io that you can connect to a QuickBooks Online company, but it's a shared, you know, web spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So it's not Google Drive spreadsheet. It's called Liveflow.io.
I've used Liveflow to create kind of custom sheets. So it pulls into Google Sheets, and then using the different Google Sheet tools, you can create different charts and graphs, which is pretty cool. So like I've been able to pull out data from QuickBooks, and then for my e-commerce clients, like give them a visual representation of like their different marketplaces so they can see how well they're doing, let's say on Amazon versus Shopify and so on. And so there's some really cool stuff that you can do inside of Google Sheets just using that information that you've pulled out.
That's great. Thanks for all those.
I just keep putting links in the chat if anyone's paying attention. Every time we mention something, I'm like,
thank you.
Let me just throw it in there for you guys.
Kelly. That's awesome. I think now we're going to move on to kind of tried and tested some of your classic favorite QuickBooks Online features. So Kelly, thoughts on kicking it off with the Loom? Do you want to do an overview first and then transition? How do you feel?
So I recorded a Loom so that you guys could see some of these things, and then we're not sure the audio is going to work, so I may just talk over. So if my voice doesn't match the video, don't be alarmed. But basically just walking through different places in QuickBooks to find these things. It's not, you know, anything super crazy. But yeah, so there I am. And I'm showing you reclassified transactions here. So just choosing a random expense and kind of showing that you can then go in and change one or a bunch all at the same time. So in this case, changing the category that it was in, you're able to find it under the accountant tools, but also if you're an end user, so if you're a small business user and you have QuickBooks Online Advanced, you also have this tool. So let's say you've decided to either change your categories or how you want to look at your reports, or you made a mistake and you added a bunch of things to the wrong place. You can go through, find them, click on them, choose Reclassify, and it'll let you move a whole bunch of stuff over at once. You can also use it to reclass something if you have classes turned on. And so it's a way of, I use it as mostly a cleanup tool, but like I said, if it's something where somebody's made a mistake, you have to go back, whatever that looks like, it's going to be a lot easier to do that in here. You can use, it'll give you two options, profit and loss or balance sheet items. So in this next one, we were talking about credit card payments. So I chose just in the sample company, something that had gone out as an expense. We wanted to match it to that MasterCard. So there are different ways you can do this. The kind of old school way of doing it was creating a transfer so that it would match when it reached on the MasterCard side. So you see the money leaving the bank. The other way of now doing it is that you can record it as a credit card payment. So again, choosing that MasterCard account because that's where you want it to land, but then also choosing the vendor, in this case, MasterCard, which I had to create. And so you're able to then add a memo to it. And so if you need to remember something, if there's a date of the payment, maybe you wanted to put in some notes for your client, whatever that looks like, that's what that option was. And then I give you a third option because there is another way of doing it using the categorize option. So if you're needing to possibly make a change to it in the future, you're not going to be able to make a change on a transfer, but you can categorize it by choosing that MasterCard option again as the account. And then you can add a tag to it or a memo, anything that you might have to remember, but you'll be able to go back and make changes to it. So should that be an option? There's your thing. Oh, so this is the calculator feature. So a lot of people don't realize that in the numeric fields inside of QuickBooks, you're able to use a calculator that will pop up when you use functions like multiplication, addition, subtraction, division. So this is me doing a bunch of simple ones for you, but it's a really cool feature. I don't know what it is. My clients think it's like magic every time I do it in front of them if we're on a screen share. So I always think that's pretty cool. Actually, Laura, so in this audio, I said, Laura, I'm going to need you to help me here. So this was the date fields. Okay. So the shortcuts for the date fields, I know T is for today, Y is for this year, and then there are a bunch, but I don't know the rest of them.
Yeah, so the other ones are plus, plus, plus will advance one day to tomorrow, the next day, minus, minus, minus goes back a day in time. And then there are the, wait, do I need to go fast? Do we need to pause this?
Well,
Ryan, can you pause
I guess
for a
I
second?
kept going, but we can pause it. There we go. Let's pause that. Okay, so keep going.
So
I'll
try to be quick. So there's week, month, and year. And just think of the first letter of each of those. Week is a W. And so if you type a W in a date field, it's going to go to the first day of the week. If you type a K, which is the last letter in the word week, it's going to go to the last day of the week. Same for month, same for year. So Y is first day of the year, but R is will always shoot to 12/31, last day of the year.
I wish I knew that one when I was doing year-end stuff. Okay, and what was my last thing? I'm like, we're back in the bank feed. What was my last?
Here, let's go back a bit, Ryan. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And then we can kick it off. Let you catch up, Kelly.
I'm like, what was I showing everyone here? Oh, bulk adding. So if you have a bunch of transactions, so I typically sort by description. So I know if there's a whole bunch and I'm doing a cleanup, once I name that first one by vendor and then give it a category, it's usually going to then filter down and do that for the rest of them. And then you're able to click on the left and add them all at once. The same for excluding, which I didn't include in the video, but if you pull in, let's say, a bunch of transactions from the bank and you have duplicates and you're needing to exclude them, again, pulling in, click, 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 and then you have the options of accept, update, and exclude. So doing this for cleanup work is major. I don't know why people don't do this or set rules to help with their cleanups, but a lot of people don't realize that you can do stuff like this. So having the option to clear everything out. The other way that I do it is if I've already set up my rules, I sort by category or match, and then I'll bring everything that's already recognized to the top. So making sure that once my rules are in place, I can then go in and add, hundreds of transactions at a time, basically. So once everything's been categorized, it's just as simple as going in and clicking to add them. So just some like tried and true. This one was duplicating windows, but then also using your different Chrome options, so your different Chrome profiles. So you do have the option of duplicating a Chrome tab to have two tabs open for the same company. Which a lot of small business owners don't realize that you can then open another tab. But if you're needing to open, as an accountant, needing to open two different companies at the same time, and it did cut me off, I ran out of time. So opening two different companies at the same time, you can set up Chrome profiles. So I have Chrome profiles tied to different email addresses, but then I can sign into QuickBooks Online and have them both open kind of side by side. So you have companies that work together and you're having to, let's say, transfer or, move different things back and forth. You want to make sure they're going to match. Or if you've done something in one company, there's ways that you can use that same rule or link and then open in another company. So if you've already done something like created an expense, or you've set a rule or something that you want to basically copy into another company, you're able to open that then in the next company. So having the two tabs open, copy the link, open it in that other company, and you'll be able to then use that same functionality in a different company. So it's, I guess, more ways of multitasking and being more productive.
Great. Thanks, Kelly, for that in-depth tutorial. Really appreciate it. Our next question we're going to look at is what QuickBooks Online best practices should our audience today be looking to implement in 2023? Kelly, do you want to start us off?
I'm like, okay. Can we go to the next slide?
Yes.
There we go. Okay. So for sure, we just finished up January, starting with those W-9s. So I always say to, and there's a typo, 1089s down the road. Just saw that. I'm like, okay, that's different. We did not invent a new form. It's just a typo. So the W-9s, I always tell my clients, don't pay their vendors until they provide a W-9, because when it comes to the end of the year, a lot of times we get pushback. I don't know what people think that they are hiding at this point. The IRS is keeping track of all of the electronic payments, everything that's going on. They know if you've gotten money from someone. And so getting that W-9 from jump, when you're entering them into QuickBooks, just get it from day one. You can set up a ZAP so that when you enter a new vendor, you can send out a request immediately for them to add that W-9. You can do it from inside of QuickBooks. If you add them as a contractor instead of just a vendor, you can send them an invite to fill out that information. However you want to do it, but do it from day one. That's my biggest suggestion when it comes to collecting this stuff, because scrambling at the end of the year, everybody's looking for those things. It's going to delay being able to send them out, and then it falls on the company, and it just kind of sucks that way. Month-end close, so using the tool inside of QuickBooks, bringing it back to the inside QuickBooks stuff, using the tools inside of QuickBooks like Overview, using your dashboard, using month-end close. There's just different workflows for how you can handle it. I'm going to say that Laura probably would have a workflow set in Arrow for month-end close, likely a template that you guys can use, but getting into that, right? There's definitely a template in there, but using month-end close and being consistent with it is probably going to be, I would say, best practice worthy. Closing every client out, reconciling. Some accountants lock the month once they're done with it, however you want to do it. Attaching the bank statements. Also, you have the option to attach the bank statement inside of QuickBooks when you reconcile. We keep a copy of the reconciliation report as well, so that we can show that we've completed the work and we have record of it in case anything changes. We put that into their Lisio files. Reconciling asset accounts. So that's another big one that is fairly controversial because some people do it and some people don't. But one of the features about QuickBooks is that you can do it. So a lot of times people have issues with other accounting softwares because they don't allow for this. And this is one of the big deal breakers for them. And so being able to reconcile different asset accounts at month end, making sure that everything's matching up that you need it to be, and then not having to do it at the end of the year and rush through it, is best practice in my opinion. Running the non-reconciled detail report, so keeping track of that inside of QuickBooks. There is a report that you can run to, Laura, is it a standard report or do you create it with a transaction report?
We customize it with a transaction report.
Yeah. So creating a transaction report where you're using the filters that you can go through and save it as that custom report so you can do it. This is one of those things also that once you create it, you can then duplicate it into other companies so that you're not having to keep recreating it. So once you've set those parameters, you can then use it in other QuickBooks companies, and then you kind of have it for all your clients and you're not having to kind of do it over and over. Rules are rules are your friend. I'm just going to say rules are your friend. Setting up rules in the bank feed is, I cannot begin to express how helpful that has been. So it's a major thing for cleanup work. But now you also have some more advanced stuff where you can set a specific memo for it. So if something always comes in, let's say from the gas station, and it always looks kind of funky, but they go to the same place over and over, you can have it change the vendor name to the correct vendor name. You can then also now change the memo. So you can write in there that this was, gas from EP, whatever it looks like, rather than the mumbo jumbo that comes in from the credit card. And you can test your rules now, which is really nice. So you can have it show you what's going to fall into this rule before you then go back into QuickBooks. Because I've had it where I set up a rule and I go back and I'm like, what went wrong? Where did this go? Why isn't this pulling in all the transactions I thought it was going to? And it was like, I mistyped a word, or again, the mumbo jumbo from the credit card was missing a letter, whatever that looks like. And so you're going back and forth. You can test it right there now, and it'll tell you if it's going to work and which transactions are going to fall into it. And it's just like a really great feature. Okay, so now I've talked about all of them. Sorry, Laura, I wasn't sure if I was supposed to keep going, so I just kind of kept going.
I know, I did the same. Yeah, I mean, I concur on all of that. I'll just call out for sure the month-end close. I mean, if you're not doing a month-end close, you could argue that if you're saving it for the end of the year, you could argue that you're just doing a cleanup job at the end of the year. So keep it clean, folks. Let's do it every month. And the month-end close, you're right, we do have checklists for it in Arrow. We have an Arrow library for anyone who uses Arrow to use as kind of a template overview. And then we do for sure customize them for most of our clients to really customize it to their balance sheet. A big part of the month-end close is closing all the balance sheet accounts. But there are probably, I want to say like 30 steps. And on each of the two main checklists that we use for month-end close, I'm talking in a very general sense here. So we're going through all the different account types in a balance sheet. Cash accounts, you're reconciling the statements, whereas current liability accounts, you may be using the reconcile tool to clear out any things that wash against each other for the month. And then you still need to be left with a detailed report of what the open items are that haven't cleared, and that makes up the balance. That's your supporting documentation now for the balance in the balance sheet. And I'm gonna throw out a spreadsheet.com here. That's another app, which is kind of like a Google spreadsheet and a Liveflow IO, but a little bit different in that we kind of use this to share with our customers each of their balance sheet accounts at close, and you can actually attach a document. I wish I could do it in Google Sheets. I'm a big Google fan, but you cannot. You can do a link, but you can actually attach multiple documents. The document is stored in the spreadsheet in the cell. Anyway, that's nice. And we share that with our clients. So at month-end close, it's a way to give them a deliverable so they really know, like, these are my balances on the balance sheet, but oh wait, don't glaze over. There's actually meaning to them. This is what's making up that number, and here it is. So yeah, month-end close is a big one for us. And I'll touch quickly on the W-9 1099s because we did just finish that reporting period. And that is, as Kelly said, we do that. We try to do that on every vendor as they're a new vendor. Our welcome vendor email says, welcome, rolling out the red carpet for a new vendor. Send us your W-9 so that we can set you up and pay you. We need that in order to even set you up in our system. So it is helpful to get that on the front end. Having said that, we all get new clients during the year, and you weren't there for the welcome vendor part, and you are still asking for them in middle January. So, okay, just being real.
I will admit, none of us are perfect, and there's always somebody, there's always a straggler somewhere in one of my clients that I'm missing a W-9 for. So even with all of the different safety features that we've put in place to prevent it, it still happens. So none of us are perfect. It's a thing.
Well, thanks, ladies. And we're just going to move on to our last question before we move into Q&A, because we are coming up to the top of the hour here. So when so many of our, clients or some of the businesses on the call today are kind of hitting those limitations of QuickBooks Online, they needed to do more. What are kind of your recommendations when you're, experiencing growing pains within QuickBooks? Kelly, do you want to start us off?
Oh, I was gonna say apps. So definitely, yes. So you have QuickBooks Online Advanced, which is going to give you less limitations, and it's going to allow you to grow a little bit more with different roles, different, more advanced features, more along the lines of what would be middle market or a larger company in general. But also, I will max out a QBO Plus file with all the apps. So whether it's an outside inventory management, something that is helping manage bring their sales in from their POS or their marketplace, whatever that looks like whatever they're needing, there's likely an app out there for it, or there's something that you can kind of build out in something like a Zapier or a no code. Make is another option, another app. It's just called Make now. But having ways of, I'm going to say, extending QuickBooks or stretching it to what you need it to do. I always kind of say to my clients that QuickBooks is my hub, but there are different things that we're able to connect to it using a CRM, I'm going to say like method. In general, so that you're not using QuickBooks as your CRM is highly recommended. That is also a big one. But anything that's going to help you kind of expand on before you're needing to, move outside. Not just, I love QuickBooks, so that's me saying that, but also the familiarity of it, like having your clients move to a new system, having you try to figure out a new system can be really challenging. Having that one client that's not on QuickBooks because they needed this thing, whatever that looks like, it can usually be fixed with an app of some sort. And if there's an app out there, I say this very often, but if there's an app out there that is kind of there but not quite there, reach out to them. The same way that QuickBooks is asking for feedback, so are app companies. And a lot of times it's because they don't realize that accountants need it to do something different or look a different way or reach QuickBooks in a different way. They live in their tech bubble sometimes, and they just don't realize that you need it to be a sales receipt instead of an invoice, or you need it to look this way or say this thing or pull in line items or whatever that looks like. They usually have the ability within their developers or whatever that looks like with the API from QuickBooks. But if they don't know it, if they don't know you need it, then they can't fix it and they can't make it. So I'm very big on feedback and telling companies what you need, because I'm not a developer. I'm not going to go figure it out, but usually they can. You want to take the last one, Laura? I feel really selfish. I just keep talking.
I'll say, and just to what I'm picturing when you're saying that is, I remember about a decade ago sitting in a room with some other accounting professionals, and Scott Cook, founder of Intuit, and Brad Smith at the time was the CEO before Sasan. And they told us intentionally they were building an ecosystem, a platform. And QuickBooks Online was the core center of it, the general ledger, but they intended for us to all use the App Store and to be very open to that. And in fact, we all know they have the developer.intuit.com. As much attention and time and conferences they build for us as accounting professionals, they do for their developer nation, they call it, for their developers. They're helping them build custom things that businesses use. That's how Intuit fulfills their mission of bringing prosperity to businesses, not just small, but we've got them in market now. And so they don't see it as a failure if something can't be done in QuickBooks. That's very intentional. So we shouldn't see it as a failure if something's not to be done in QuickBooks. We, as the accounting professionals, take back the general ledger. I remember Darren Root used to say that. Hello, Darren out there. Darren would say, accountants need to take back the general ledger. Salespeople should not be in the general ledger. Warehousemen should not be in the general ledger. So, you can do that through the use of these apps. So it extends QuickBooks Online. Yeah, I'll hit on location tracking versus consolidated reporting. That is something that is often a growing pain as companies grow. Many of them have multiple entities or multiple locations at least. And so you want to learn about, and you can do that in QuickBooks Online Advanced training, certification training. You want to learn about location tracking so that you can determine whether that is the appropriate functionality to use inside QuickBooks Online, or whether you need multiple QuickBooks Online companies and then want to use consolidated reporting to bring together one report with your multiple entities having separate books.
Yeah. I will say Liveflow also does that consolidated reporting really well, which is cool. So, and I've put all of the links. So Liveflow is in there, spreadsheet.com, Arrow Workflow. I would like to think that apps.com is an automatic, but I'll add that one too. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with connecting apps and expanding on that environment. Method, Arrow Workflow, they're all, majors.
Yeah, Method. And we're using Arrow for our firm. And then we're using these other apps we're talking about on each of our clients to do their work. So Arrow's running the whole firm so that we're all doing the proper services at the right time. And that's when we're doing the accounting department. We also have clients where we're their accounting technology solution. We set them up, we train them how to do it, and then they have their own Arrow account so that their accounting department can run consistently and optimized, following their all their checklists, their to-do lists. But for each of the clients, we're going to have QuickBooks Online, Bill.com, Expensify, Method. Method is so important to every business is so different. They can use the same core general ledger. They all have bank accounts. They need to do bank fee. They need to close. But Method is what can change every business is very unique. And so it's the unique pieces we really need to speak to sometimes, because that's where the sales team should be, or that's where the case management staff should be.
It's another way of separating those roles. So having your salespeople in Method so that they're not screwing up the stuff in QuickBooks is also really important.
And the integration to QuickBooks, Method's integration to QuickBooks is so good and so tight. And the ability to be able to build things, I mean, I've had a lot of fun there over the past decade and a half building custom things. So
very customizable.
I need QuickBooks, but I want the invoice screen to do this. Well, you can't go in and change the way QuickBooks is programmed. You're just going to have to use it the way it is, but you could do it in Method.
Totally. Thanks for the kind words, ladies. We definitely appreciate it. So if you guys want to give Method a try, you're more than welcome to. We do have a free trial. So that's method.me, or you can find us on the App Store. And with that, I know Laura wants to tell us a little bit about Arrow really quickly just before we wrap up. So I'll pass it over to her.
Okay, well, as I was just saying, we use Arrow for our firm to run our firm and all the work we do for our different clients. And so that keeps it very optimized as far as the work we do, because even though a lot of the work we do is similar, it's slightly different for different customers. So this comes in so handy, because when we are training our different staff, when they start with us, or when staff are covering for someone who's out on vacation or out on a sick day, you can easily just take one of these live web-based checklists. You just log into your Arrow account. There's all the work you're doing. But if somebody's out for the day, you just take one of their checklists and put it on someone else's dashboard. And when they go in to do their work, they're not just covering for Jenny and, oh, I guess I'll have to reconcile this client that I'm not familiar with, but you're following the checklist that Jenny does. And it's right there with check boxes to check off. It has all the resources at your fingertips. When Arrow launched a decade or so ago, we would call them tasks or activities, but our users started calling them arrows. So now it's what they're referred to as these interactive checklists that have all the resources you need, links to go log into it. You know how sometimes you're running payroll, and at the end of payroll for one of your clients, you have to then go log into their 401k and upload the amount you just withheld from their staff's paychecks. And like these little URLs you forget, and you're looking where is that URL? They're all at your fingertip on your spreadsheet. So you're doing your spreadsheet, and if somebody's covering for you, they're doing your spreadsheet. You've got procedure guides linked with screenshots to show you, if you're unfamiliar, how to do that certain step. It's not like a big binder on a shelf that you got to go look up how to do it. I don't mean a procedure guide like that. I mean like you're reconciling a bank account, and one of the steps says if the beginning balance on screen in QuickBooks doesn't match the beginning balance on the statement, here's how to do it. And if you don't have those memorized, say you're newer in the profession. You click the procedure guide and it walks you through the advanced certified ways to troubleshoot that. So, and it's not a procedure guide of how to do reconciliations. It's just the part related to the step you're on. So just kind of picture in your mind this way of working where you've got this really consistent way of working. This is how you scale an accounting firm, and you can pass it out. If you are a business owner or managing or running a CAS firm and you're sometimes feeling, I am such a bottleneck. Everybody wants to do so well. They're awesome. I hired them. I need to get out of the way, but they're waiting for me for something. This is how you roll it all out. The vault is there with all the passwords they need encrypted. The links are there. The steps are there. Just
Thank you,
let
Laura.
it roll.
So make sure to check out Arrow. And then really quickly, I know Kelly's been doing some cool stuff outside of accounting, kind of on Etsy.
Love this.
Yeah, just share a little bit with that.
Sorry, someone rang my doorbell and my dog is going nuts. So I put the link in the chat real quick, but just check out the Etsy shop. We do accounting merch, accounting related merch, work from home stuff, just kind of fun stuff like my mug that says I fix books, t-shirts, all of that kind of gifty kind of stuff. So 10% off until the 18th for anyone that attended. Feel free to share that out on social if you have friends that also might be interested.
Thank you both. And we do have just one question before we wrap up from Elizabeth. They are just wondering, they find Excel more user-friendly than Google Sheets. Any preference or recommendations on those two kind of, I guess, competitors in a way?
I err on the side of Google Sheets, mostly because it's a live sheet. I don't use Microsoft 365, so being able to share it with other people that have Gmail or Google, which is almost everybody, I think at this point, in some capacity. So I tend to lean towards Google Sheets.
Yeah, same. If I build a spreadsheet, I'm going to start in Google Sheets. But if you need the advanced tools in Excel, certainly there's no reason not to use Excel. And I also am often using Excel. I mean, every week I'm using Excel because I have some CSV file that I'm pulling data in and out, down to Excel and up into some software I'm importing it to or something like that. So that's why I love this new functionality. You must be happy about this then, whoever wrote in that question, to be able to hook it to a QuickBooks file and keep that data refreshed.
Totally. All right, so with that, we're going to wrap up. Kelly and Laura, thank you so much for your time and your awesome tips. For those of you still on the call, we'll be sharing the recording and the slide deck in the coming days. So watch out for your inbox for that. All right, until next time, thank you all.
Thank you.